As I'm doing the work, I'm finding out more about myself, that I do have a story, right? And I do have experiences that have led me to this space of wanting to be the safe space for people, because I know how trauma can impact people and how it shows up in children, and how people may think that, oh, they're oppositional, defiant, right? They have all these diagnoses and these DSM terminologies that they want to put on young people, when it really is that the behavior that you're seeing is their form of communication that they don't yet have language for. They're just trying to communicate that. And if you sit still long enough and you be quiet long enough, you'll get the story and you'll say, oh, it's what happened to you. Ain't nothing wrong with you. You've had some things go on in your life. I'm an adult and I haven't had these many experiences. And you're 12 and you're walking in here with all of this weight, you know? And so, and early on in my career, being able to hear those stories, you know, to hear about a child who's not performing in a classroom and a teacher come to me to tell me about that child, but I have interacted with that child and heard part of their story. Oh, I can tell you exactly why that's happening. So I'm Yolanda Hall. I am a youth mindset coach, because in my work, I have realized that mindset is a big part of the problem. And so a shift in mindset is gonna have to be part of the solution. And so I am the founder and CEO of Unbreakable Minds Coaching. And our mission is to help youth ages 15 to 25 to change or shift their mindset just enough to meet the best versions of themselves so they can live their best life with purpose, on purpose. I was born in a place called Far Rockaway. It's in New York. It's in the borough of Queens. So anybody from New York knows the A train. And so I took the A train from Far Rockaway to Brooklyn every day and attended high school. One thing I'll say is I remember in high school that there was a class that we could take called community service. And so I chose to go to my elementary school for part of that semester and the hospital where I was born. So just being in Catholic school really gave me a love for service. I didn't think about it like, you know, serving, it was just what we did. But as I look back and I share my story, I realized that they planted a seed. My mother and father started out in public housing. You know, in New York, they call it projects. So I'll say that for those purposes. So, you know, my mother lived in the projects, my father lived in the projects. That's where they met. They went to school together. And my grandparents lived in the projects. Like, everybody lived in the projects, but back then you hear stories about how cool it was. You know, everybody knew everybody. You could hang out outside. There wasn't a whole lot of drama and violence going on. So that was my roots, you know. Again, you know, a lot of people's goal is to get out of the projects. And so one by one, my grandmother moved out, my mother moved out, but this is where we started. So it's never been that I looked at that community in a certain way, because, you know, that's where we came from. And we visited often because we knew people there. So when you talk about a parallel to the communities that we serve here, absolutely. You know, when we go into those communities, it feels like home. You know, there's no fear, there's no judgment. We enter into these communities and it is like, okay, let's go. How y'all doing? You know, I think our whole presence exudes that we feel like we're a part. And I think sometimes without even saying a word, that people invite us in. They don't know where we're from. They don't know our past. But just because of the energy that we exude when we show up in spaces, it's like, oh, okay, come on in, you know. I had a really amazing school counselor, Miss Scott Sagan. I don't know how we became cool, how she even knew who I was, but we formed this relationship. You know, I would probably say later again that someone told me to make sure you keep your name on the tip of people's tongues. And by forming that relationship, when opportunities came up, she called me. And then so she got me a job at the United States Attorney's Office. Oh my gosh. So I'm in here with these big attorneys and they're dealing with criminal cases and all these different things. As I told my job that I was coming to Richmond being the capital, Richmond having a U.S. Attorney's Office, which is on 6th and Main, my boss said, let me make some calls and see if they have the program there. And I was able to transfer from the New York office to the Richmond office. So I stepped into town with a job. I got my psychology degree, and then I said, I'm going to get my master's, but I need a minute because I'm not sure. Because I've been very strategic about where I place myself, because I'm always thinking, if I'm here, who will I meet? Who will I see? I learned that moving around the city. And so I'm like, oh, if I go to the credit union, everybody in the county comes to the credit union to get their money. And so I was able to meet principals and superintendents and, people in schools, people in the churches in the area, like just a little bit of everybody in the county. And I made a lot of connections there. So after a couple of years of that, I said, okay, I need to move into the human services space because I still want to work with people. So I did in-home counseling because a psychology degree was getting me in the door there. Then I decided to go ahead and apply for grad school. So I go back to VCU and I'm like, so what can I do at this point? Look down the list and I saw guidance in school counseling, a master's of education in guidance in school counseling. And who did I think about? Miss Scott Sagan, my girl, who had hooked me up all those years, who had been my contact and my connection, and the person who believed in me, saw things in me I may not have seen it myself. And through our relationship, I had a lot of opportunities that I might not have had if it wasn't for us. And so I said, that's what I'm gonna be. I'm gonna be a school counselor. I get a job at John Roth Middle School, and this is 2001, so we know it's 9/11. And so my first month in school, I'm dealing with this crisis. I'm from New York. I was about 27 or 28. What I was experiencing was nothing that they told me I was going to experience. Nothing that was in the book. It was just showing up 100%, being there for the kids, being there for the parents, the families. Some of them were going through some major trauma. We had students who lived in Richmond but was finding a way to use somebody's address to come, because the parents were like, I don't know what else to do, but I have to get my kids into what I feel like is a better situation. And I'm working there for 5 years, and a bunch of things happen, and I'm supposed to get promoted, and there's a job of the street at the alternative school. In this type of school, in an alternative school, was Newbridge. You're working there's no leadership, we're all working together. It's a small school. So when I first went to this school, it was Newbridge School. First of all, they changed the terminology from alternative to non-traditional. And they did that because alternative had a stigma that we take the baddest kids you got, call us, we'll find a place for them, and this is pretty much like a holding space because they can't make it in the general population. And so we made it a school of choice, where if a parent and a child was sitting in a meeting with an administrator and they were running out of solutions, running out of things to try, someone could say, well, we have this non-traditional program, and you can apply, and you don't have to go, but you can apply, and if you get in, it's an amazing opportunity. It's a small environment. The classes had, maybe 10 kids in them. This is gonna give power back to the families by saying, I'm not doing well here, and I need a different environment. So we changed the narrative around alternative school. Even though it still was an alternate to regular education or the comprehensive school, it was putting people in an environment that worked for them. So it was kind of putting the student first versus the needs of the school to get that student out. I decided to leave the schools in 2018. And so for 4 years, I was prevention coordinator at Henrico Prevention. I was in an apartment complex, so I'm right in the thick of things, right? And we're attached to the rent office, and the rent office shares with people who are moving in that we have this amazing after-school program. It's free, it's in the neighborhood, the kids can get off the bus, they can walk right here, and by the time you get home, they'll be coming down the sidewalk to the house. And so I was like, oh, this is so awesome. And so I was the Connect coordinator for 4 years. And so many amazing experiences, just being able to expose young people to different things. We took them on field trips, and I had even more autonomy. I felt the chains falling because now I was able to say, I'm looking at this group of young people, and as a group, this is what they need. And even as individuals, this is what they need, and was able to provide that. So that was an amazing experience. And then I moved into another position, environmental strategies, but still working with the community, but I'm doing more things that if I can change something in the environment, educate some people, share some things with them, come out to community events, give them resources, I'm like, this is my jam, because I connect with people. I'll go to every outdoor event. Any meeting you have, call me, I'm coming, because I connect with people and I connect people. But it's something else. And COVID gave us a lot of time to sit home and think, right? And so I'm sitting at home, and so somebody says, we're gonna start a group coaching program. I get in this program, and somehow I find myself with the coach at least 2 or 3 times by myself. Like, by the time I finished with these people, I was like, I know exactly what I wanna do. The same magic you created here, this is what I need to do for young people. If I would have had something like this when I was in New York trying to figure out what I didn't know, I didn't know what I didn't know, and all the questions that I didn't know to ask. If I had someone like this, my life would have been different. Not that I have regrets, but life would have been different. And how amazing would it be for a young person to be able to have this kind of personal development at 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, and not have to wait, and I say to them all the time, not to have to wait till you 40-something like me to figure it out, right? That light came on, I was 40-something years old. So I'm like, okay, this is it. And so I thought I was going to be this coach that just did one-on-ones, and I would be working on Zoom or meeting people in the park or the library. But people knew me as a school counselor, and they know what school counselors do. So we're in the pandemic, and they're calling me, and they're like, okay, Yolanda, I see that you're a coach. I can't get my kid off the couch. They are not motivated. They are not down with this home school, Zoom school thing. What am I supposed to do? And so I'm answering questions, and I'm giving them ideas, and they're going back and practicing it, and we're doing the thing. So then there were organizations who had groups of young people. And next thing I know, I said yes to one. I said yes to another. And so now we're like, okay, now we really get to know Richmond. And so I get to show up at the community centers, and I get to show up at the schools in Richmond, and I get to show up, at different places. And so people are talking. There's a whole community of people who are doing this work that we didn't even know existed. And so we met one people, and they told 2 people, and they introduced us to 2, and then those 2 introduced us to 2 more. And next thing you know, we were a part of that community. And so now we're serving big time. And these programs have just come out of needs that I've seen along the way. When I first received my own grant, it was for a program called the Mother-Daughter Circle. I had gotten wind of this curriculum that was going to allow teenage girls and their moms to be in a circle together. And I knew then what I knew the whole time is that the challenges we see young people facing is generational. And that when I look at a child who is experiencing some challenges, my first question now, because I'm an ACE trainer, right? I'm trauma informed, is, wow, what happened to him? But then the other question is, what happened to his parents? And so I said to myself, I could keep serving the kids, and we could keep sending them back home, and they could keep experiencing what they're experiencing, and they come back the next day, they leave with their head up, and they come back with their head back down again. And so I was reminded of that, and I was like, okay, we got to do something to serve the parents. And so then we started doing our parenting on purpose. I was going to say one thing I heard when I was getting ready to enter the entrepreneurship space is I was listening to a podcast, and I heard a girl say, somebody's breakthrough is waiting on you. And that thing hit me like a ton of bricks. And every day that you decide that you're going to let fear hold you back, that you're going to let what others may think or say hold you back, you are going against your divine purpose, number one. And number two, you're holding up somebody's breakthrough. Like, how am I going to sleep tonight if I know that I am the person that's chosen to help that person get to their breakthrough? But because of fear, I'm not stepping out to go do what I have to do so that I can meet them and be a part of that transformation. Who am I, to do that? And the biggest thing of all, if I'm being selfish, is that my life is impacted exponentially by the work that I do. Like I said, I created my whole story from being in the trenches and remembering the things that I've had experienced and remembering how far I've come and what I've been able to work through. Not even having the language to be able to say that I have experienced trauma. Not being able to have the language to be able to say, if I'm having a challenge in my life, it's because of what happened to me, or it's because of my behavior is my stress response as a response to something that's triggering me, and I don't even realize I'm just reacting, And so now I'm in a space where I can respond instead of reacting. I can take a couple of minutes and think about, where is this coming from? And all these things that I'm going through along this journey is what I teach. And if I could just let my courage or my faith be bigger than my fear and take action, then amazing things will happen. What brings me joy is to be able to go back to someone, which goes back to what we're saying about my school counselor, is to be able to go back to someone who I have worked with over the years, no matter how big or how small that interaction was, for them, number one, to smile and be excited when they see me. And they always have a story. They always remember something that I don't remember, which means even when no one is looking, or when you think no one is looking, you're making an impact. And when I see that, that brings me so much joy. And stuff like that makes me feel good because I just showed up every day. I wasn't trying to impress anybody. I wasn't trying to leave a mark. I was just trying to be me and trying to create a safe space for somebody to land and to be able to have a great experience in that moment in time that we were interacting with each other and that we were connecting, and that it was a connection that would last a lifetime, and that when I saw them again, we would just pick up where we left off, and that's exactly what's been happening.